everyone. I'm Kimberly Guilfoyle, along with Geraldo Rivera, Jesse Waters, Dana Perino, and Greg Gutfeld. It's 5 o'clock in New York City, and this is The Five. Republican Senate candidate Roy Moore is still adamantly denying allegations of sexual misconduct with minors decades ago, but calls are growing for him to step out of the race from within his own party. The latest now from Jonathan Sarri, live from Gadsden, Alabama. Jonathan.
Yeah, at this point, Roy Moore has no intention to step out of the race, but according to filings with the Federal Election Commission, the NRSC, that is the Republican Party's Senate campaign arm, has ended its fundraising agreement with Moore. Meanwhile, the candidate has been issuing a written statement today responding to some of the allegations against him. He says, quote, "I have never provided alcohol to minors, and I have never engaged in sexual misconduct. As a father of a daughter and a grandfather of 5 granddaughters, I condemn the actions of any man who engages in sexual misconduct, not just against minors, but against any woman." In that statement, of course, Roy Moore responding to allegations in that Washington Post article in which a woman claims that Moore initiated sexual advances towards her back in 1979 when she was only 14 years old. Moore goes on to deny the allegations in his statement today, saying, quote, "As a former judge and administrator of the law, I take the protection of our innocent as one of my most sacred callings. False allegations are gravely serious and will have profound consequence on those who are truly harassed or molested. I strongly urge the Washington Post and everyone involved to tell the truth." Now, Moore enjoys many loyal supporters in this state, many conservative Christians who say that Moore himself is a good Christian and they trust what he says, and they don't put a lot of faith in the allegations against him. But Democrat-leaning voters see this as a real opportunity to elect their Democrat candidate, Doug Jones. No easy task in a statewide election in this solidly red state. But as we have all learned over the past 24 hours, this is no typical election in Alabama. Back to you.
All right, thanks, Jonathan. The White House has responded to the scandal.
Like most Americans, the president believes that we cannot allow a mere allegation, in this case one from many years ago, to destroy a person's life. However, the president also believes that if these allegations are true, Judge Moore will do the right thing and step aside.
Steve Bannon, one of Moore's staunchest supporters, is still standing by him.
The Bezos, Amazon, Washington Post that dropped that dime on Donald Trump is the same Bezos, Amazon, Washington Post that dropped the dime this afternoon on Judge Roy Moore. Now, is that a coincidence? That's what I mean when I say opposition party, right? It's purely part of the apparatus of the Democratic Party. They don't make any bones about it. By the way, I don't mind it. I'll call them out every day.
Okay, so Greg, with this development, it seems some are doubling down, standing by their candidate, despite the fact that there's reporting on the other side saying that there is misconduct and a number of allegations of sexual assault.
Yeah, people say don't rush to judgment. You don't have that luxury here. You've got a month. And this isn't a court of law. There aren't criminal charges. So you can make a judgment. You can make a judgment. And you can say that somebody dropped the dime, and you could say it's a hit piece. But it could also be true. And if you're judging by that article, there is evidence there. So it can be a hit piece. It can be a smear, but it could also be true. It can be both. And you don't have the luxury of saying, you actually have to make a judgment. You are forced to make a judgment. I sympathize with the voters of Alabama because they probably sense that this is an attack, but it can be an attack and it can be true. So you have to acknowledge that this might be a hit job, but it also might be legitimately true, and that's going to force you to make a decision. You actually do have to rush to judgment because you only have a month.
Okay. Well, Dana, so yes, there obviously is the whole expediencies of the situation because the election is coming up. There isn't a lot of time to pivot or make decisions one way or the other and have what we talked about yesterday, full due process to determine, in fact, what did happen. Where do they go from here? And if you're advising, how do you tell them to handle it in the communication?
Well, a hit piece would indicate that they were trying, that it was the Democrats trying to hurt Roy Moore in this case. Mm-hmm. in this situation, in particular, let's talk about the woman who's 53 now. She was 14 years old when she says that this happened. She's on the record with the Washington Post. She never told her story before. Why? Because like many women, she's afraid to come out. She's afraid that they would trash her reputation. She's afraid that they would say all sorts of terrible things about her and her children, and it would affect her livelihood. She's a Trump voter. Okay, so I don't understand the hit piece aspect of this. Like, so something came out. You could make a judgment that you don't care.
No, I'm saying hit piece. I'm saying it's negative to him, but it's still true. That's what I'm saying. I'm not saying. I'm not complaining.
No, I know. I'm saying. I'm talking about what Bannon was saying.
Okay.
That he's saying that this is a hit piece. That the Washington Post makes this up out of whole cloth, or that this is Doug Jones, the Democrat, saying, "Oh, look what we've got. We've held on to this until 3 weeks before the election, and then we're letting it go." By all accounts, that's not what happened. And these were not Democrats that were trying to hurt Roy Moore. And so I think that everybody just needs to take a step back. And what I'm saying is, you could be an Alabama voter and decide you don't care if something happened in 1979. That is fine. It doesn't mean, though, that she's a liar.
Right.
And if that's your decision, I mean, that's your choice. You'll have to go for it. But I do think the NRSC was right to pull back its money.
Okay, so Jesse, where do we take this from here? Because obviously this is something dividing the party, dividing supporters. It's a pivotal election. It's a key seat, and now here we are.
I said it last night. I'll say it again right now. He should resign immediately because the mere stench of the allegation incapacitates him. I could be wrong about the whole story. I'm usually not, so I'm going to trust my gut on this one. The truth is,
at least
also,
you're modest.
Now, Democratic politicians and Democratic voters, let's be honest, have a very lower threshold for public shame and inappropriate behavior. If you look at Bill Clinton, survived rape allegations, survived an affair in the Oval Office. Marion Barry smoked crack on camera, was reelected in D.C. Robert Byrd said the N-word
How about
on
Donald
television.
Trump?
Let me get there. Well, don't jump ahead. And we have the mayor of Seattle, who is a Democrat, who was accused of sleeping with underage male prostitutes 5 times, still held on until his own nephew accused him of molesting him. So usually with Republicans, you know, Larry Craig taps his foot in the stall of the men's room. He's gone. Foley flirting with the pages in the Capitol.
Hastert.
He's gone. Yeah, Aaron Schock, the congressman, redecorated his office too lavishly. That was enough for him to resign. And, you know, there's a host of other guys, you know, accused of graft and seedy behavior. But Republicans usually at the whiff of any controversy, especially involving a woman, run away. Now, Moore, I mean, this guy, to hold strong on an allegation of child molestation is within his character, though, because he fought to the bitter end against same-sex marriage and fought to the bitter end when it came to keeping the 10 Commandments there. So I just think this guy sticks it out. I honestly think he's going to do it, and it's just going to be radioactive. He was already radioactive when it came to comments about Muslims and transgender and gay people. This increases it tenfold. I just don't see it getting any better.
Yeah,
well, I despise Roy Moore's politics. What Jesse mentioned about gay marriage, what he called Islam a gutter religion. He one of the founders of the birther movement, and his treatment of blacks over the years. I really want, in many ways, to see him defeated. That leads me to tend to believe the accuser, but I worry that it's not my prejudice that gives credibility to a claim, a charge that is so old that ordinarily you would have it barred by a statute of limitations. The reason we have statutes of limitations is that witnesses' memories fade. They become subject to a persuasion. They convince themselves that something happened. So generally speaking, I demand contemporaneous corroboration. Did she tell anyone at the time that this supposed horrendous action
like
happened?
A fresh complaint, we say.
And it appears from the Washington Post article that she did tell a couple of girlfriends, and it does appear that these reporters went and corroborated the dates that her mother was supposedly in court when she was sitting in the car where Judge Moore, then Attorney Moore, could have access to her to solicit her. I tend to believe that. I think
so that's corroborative.
I think it is corroborative.
Persuasive.
So, but I still believe her, and I think that a lot of voters do. But I think that Alabama it's a quirky place in the extent that You know, they could say, screw you, America, you're just picking on deep South state. You don't like conservatives. You don't like Christians. You're trying to screw our guy who supports the Ten Commandments and so forth. So I think that the Republicans are in a death spiral. I think Roy Moore stays, and I think that he loses to the Democrats.
Yeah, I think the one thing, too, to what Jesse was bringing up, sex scandals no party line. And if the left, the left will always want to focus on more. And God knows we got a lot of mileage out of Anthony Weiner. So we can't do that. We have to be equal. We have to be equally opportunistic about being disgusted. We should be disgusted by our side, and they should be disgusted by their side. And we should just be disgusted together instead of cherry picking the types of people we're going to be disgusted by. Because, I mean,
there's plenty of it to go around.
There's plenty of it, as we're learning. Every day we are over, like I said yesterday, it's raining bad men. And we have to admit that it's everywhere.
But look how much times have changed since Bill Clinton. Imagine if you had those series of accusers against the president and his alleged conduct in the Oval Office today. He would be run out of town. The Senate would have easily convicted him. He would have been thrown out of office.
Really?
Times have changed enormously.
I don't know. I mean, look at this situation. Plus, if we immediately believe the allegations against people from Hollywood, then you have to ask yourself, then why wouldn't you believe this woman who's on the record?
I do understand the people from Alabama who see it as the Washington Post versus Roy Moore. Who do I believe? And I think a lot of people don't believe the Washington Post just because of their track record of bias against conservatives, and they're going to dig in no matter what. And that's the reality of the situation
their fellow citizen who
in the
voted
media
for Trump
today.
But what about their fellow citizen who voted for Trump?
They're not believing her. A lot of people hear things and they think fake news automatically.
Everybody here is everybody on the planet is a victim of their own confirmation bias. If you want him to be innocent, you want him to win, you're going to think that way. If you think the Washington Post is biased, you're going to think that way. But if you think, oh my, this is a cultural conservative who was hiding under this illusion of being religious in order to prey on women, you're going to believe that too. That we all have to lose this confirmation bias and admit that bad stuff is there's plenty to go around.
All right, ahead, Condi Rice is bad, but an ex-Assad spokesman is good. Outrage over the hiring of a highly controversial professor at Rutgers. Next, stay with us.
When liberal students and faculty members at Rutgers didn't want Condi Rice on campus, calling her a war criminal. Now there's a new professor on payroll at the taxpayer-supported school who represented an actual war criminal. Not hearing much outrage from the left. Meet Mazen Adi. His bio mentions his 16-year background as a career diplomat, but not who he worked for. Syria's Bashar Assad, the dictator who gasses his own people. Adi is a former representative of the Syrian mission to the UN. He spent years defending the genocidal regime. This spring, he's scheduled to teach a class on international criminal law. Rutgers defends the hire, saying, faculty members enjoy the same freedoms of speech and expression as any other individual in this country. Rutgers will not defend the content of every opinion expressed by every member of our academic community. Now, this conservative student can't believe Condi was pressured off campus, but not this guy.
They invited her to speak, and then the Rutgers faculty protested, calling her a war criminal, and then she eventually rejected the invitation. But at the same time, when Rutgers hires someone who defended a war criminal, no one bats an eye. It's ridiculous.
Okay, Goodfellow, what's going on with Rutgers, man?
No, what's going on with Fox and Friends? Did you see what was behind her? Dana's book. Did you see it? Talk about subliminal advertising.
I didn't notice.
No wonder you wanted this story on the show. You know what? This makes sense. On academia, it's a sanctuary city for fascism, anti-free speech, anti-Americanism. By comparison, I think this guy might be too conservative for the campuses. I think he's going to get there and he goes, well, we may be crazy in Syria, but you guys are way crazier, and then he'll leave.
Now, you're a New Jersey resident, I believe.
Yeah, well,
so Rutgers. Well, let's just call it like that for the sake of
I pay taxes there. Yeah.
Yes, Rutgers, you pay these taxes. Now, also, Rutgers, therapy sessions after Republicans speak, Safe Spaces, Illegal Immigrant Advocacy Day, and they have social justice training centers. What is happening?
Well, I think what happened is when they found out that Syria was going to become the latest nation to join the Paris Accords on climate, everything else was forgiven. My field trip recommendation is to The Hague.
Oh,
for that guy.
okay, I like it.
I think that there are two sides to the Syrian civil war story. I don't think there would have been a Syrian civil war but for the Obama administration's bungling. They allowed the civil war to start and then implicitly supported, fanned those flames. I think if we had backed the Shiite government, we would have been much better off. Having said that, I think that if you have, I detest censorship. And if you have, I want, Condi Rice to speak. I want this guy to speak. It should be a free fire zone on universities everywhere. Political correctness stinks. To censor one side and not the other. I draw the line at like Nazis or cannibals.
Thank God for that.
Okay,
Cannibals? How unfair.
What about Nazi cannibals?
Okay, yeah, well, what about,
Especially Nazi cannibals.
What about
They're
justifying Bashar Assad's gassing of women and children? You don't draw the line there?
Well, when you look at some of the atrocities, who is Assad fighting? First of all, Assad is fighting ISIS. Our American administration, the 44th president and the 45th president, have made it our national policy that ISIS is our prime enemy in Syria, not Assad. War is horrifying. War is messy. Civilians get chopped up. We have our own checkered history when it comes to civilian casualties. Even now, friendly fire in Afghanistan and so forth.
I think it's a little different than gassing your own citizens.
Are you suggesting that this guy was the gasser?
No, I'm suggesting that he publicly defended it to the world, Kimberly.
Yeah, I mean, look, this guy, no one should have any bid for him, let's put it that way, because this is an individual that is part and parcel of that regime that was literally committing genocide and killing women and children, killing their own people. So, and this isn't like him coming for a speaking engagement. This is as an adjunct professor. So they're going a step further in essentially justifying his presence and his inherent value as they see it to come to an American university to put forward these ideas. So to me, I think it's reprehensible. I don't know what happened. Like Rutgers must have fallen out of their bed and hit their head in the morning and like did not know what was going on.
It's basically like hiring Baghdad Bob to teach classes.
If it were honest.
Now, he was a communication expert.
The thing is, if you're going to have this guy there to teach, why not make it an honest class? He's a henchman. You call it Henchman 101. 100 ways to kill somebody with a shoelace. Make it as honest as possible. Don't hide it. He's a henchman.
Who gets to determine whether you've crossed the line, though? That's the problem. Condi Rice, remember, what her administration did or did not do? At what point do you say, oh no, they're guilty by association? Who makes that determination?
I say the Board of Regents at Rutgers should probably make that determination. Anyway, Joe Biden had some choice words for President Trump this week. Now, new rumors are swirling about a potential 2020 run. Up next.
Reflection this week on election 2016 as we marked its first anniversary on Wednesday. In a new interview, Joe Biden expresses some regrets that he wasn't on the ballot.
I have a regret that I am not president because I think there's so much opportunity. I think America is so incredibly well positioned. Oprah. But was I prepared to be able to give my whole heart, my whole soul, and all my attention to the endeavor? And I knew I wasn't.
The former vice president lost his son, Beau, in 2015. The grief of the loss prevented him from entering the race, but there's much speculation now about a possible run in 2020. Politico reports Biden's been telling people privately he might do it, and of late he's been publicly taking aim at President Trump.
This has gotten so sort of coarse, so vile, so demeaning, and our children are listening. This is eating at the fabric of this country. It is wrong. And I think what happened last night all across the country, including with Republicans, is I'm tired of this.
Yeah.
It's undermining the social fabric of the nation. And this phony nationalism.
KG, do you think Biden's laying the groundwork?
You know, it's interesting. He seems a little bit more kind of in that like zone where he's feeling like, you know what, I could do a good job. My head's in a good place. I've suffered tremendous loss, but I feel optimistic about the country and about my ability to serve. So from what he's saying now, the two questions that he said every candidate should ask themselves to Oprah, his answers now, it seems, are yes to both, that he thinks he's the best one for the job and that he can give his whole heart and soul to the endeavor. Certainly, I think on the heels of Donna Brazil's revelations, that she certainly thought that he would be the best choice and candidate to replace Hillary during that pivotal time where she wasn't doing well and having headaches and falling and whatnot. Then it suggests that someone of, you know, that has run a campaign, okay, and ran a very good campaign, thinks that he's the guy for the job. I mean, I don't know. He looks good to me.
So he has a book coming out, Greg. It's called Promise Me, Dad, A Year of Hope, Hardship, and Purpose. It's going to be released on Tuesday. So you're probably going to see a lot more of him in the next week.
There you go. So it has nothing to do with the book coming out. Look, he'll be 77 in 2020.
78.
78. Yep. So 80 is the new 40. So I think it's fine. My prediction is he'll run, and Barack Obama will be his running mate. They will flip it. I don't know. I got to tell you, this is not a. They got to get some new people in this party. They got to get. This is just. It's the people. There's too many bad memories associated with a lot of these people. So it's time to find some new blood.
Sanders wants to get back in again, and I don't think.
How about Biden and Oprah?
Going anywhere?
I like.
Oh, that's a ticket.
I like that, and also I like the inside furniture outside. I thought that was an interesting set.
Yeah, it's very artistic. What do you think, Jesse?
I say let the games begin. I mean, the gaffes begin with Joe Biden. Look, he tells people in wheelchairs to stand up. He makes fun of Indian accents at 7-Eleven. He's an admitted plagiarist. He says Republicans want to put black people back in chains. I think he drops the F-bomb on hot mics, and he gets a little handsy in photo op lines. He's also got the worst foreign policy instincts of anybody in his generation. Lifelong politician, I think he was against all of Reagan's push to take down the Soviet Union.
Carter?
Yeah,
okay.
but, well, that's a close second.
You're getting crazy now.
He voted against Desert Storm and against the surge. He was against the bin Laden raid. Didn't want to pull the trigger on the raid. So listen, he does have some natural assets against President Trump. I think he's a straight-talking guy. He appeals to blue-collar, working-class people, and he has a lot of experience. But at the same time, no natural base, not a lot of electricity, can't really fundraise, and he's going to be very old. And I do not see the Democrats nominating a straight white male for president these days.
Okay.
What if he's 78?
You better hold on to all these points because I think you're going to need them again.
Trump will eat his lunch. I think that the Democrats cannot win, on Greg's point, by going backwards. They need to find someone of a more contemporaneous nature, a younger, vibrant, energetic person who has nothing to do with Clinton's or even Obama's. You have to start over again.
Kamala Harris?
Well, but she's, I was thinking that he was suggesting Kamala, but she also is tied in with the Obamas and with Clintons, more so a little bit with the Obamas.
But I mean, that age, I was with Trump during the Puerto Rico trip, his very controversial Puerto Rico trip. What I marveled at, and knowing him now for over 40 years, what I continue to be impressed with is his energy. He's nonstop. He is so quick. Biden is not. Biden is a reasonably fit person, but he's a traditional politician. He's not used to being attacked the way Trump will attack him. He lacks that charisma. I don't think he's ever campaigned effectively for national office. He did okay against Paul Ryan, another traditional politician. But against Donald Trump, it's like he will really be disadvantaged, I believe.
All right. Well, we know where everybody stands, I guess. Ahead, a new study says more men are marrying up. Does that mean more women are marrying down? Right back.
As the Fox News resident senior expert in marriage, I've noticed a new trend. More and more men are marrying up. According to a new study, a record 25% of husbands have married wives who are better educated than they are, which is a sharp contrast from when I first got married back in the 1960s. Back in those dark ages, the man was almost always better educated than the woman in nearly 4 out of 5 couples. Kimberly, what is going on?
Thank God you're the resident senior expert on this. Yes, I defer to you on all things. What is it with the Puerto Ricans? I'm just very passionate, loving
I just believe in marriage.
Yeah, me too.
I'm an optimist.
I mean,
how many do you have between you? How marriages?
8.
Keep in mind, I'm only contributing 2 to that number.
Oh, no, I'm only 5, but I've been married 17 years.
Only 5.
Wait, 5 times?
5 times.
So 7.
Well,
All right,
seven,
fine.
seven.
Take it
I
easy.
digress. Were any
yeah.
of your husbands less educated
Oh,
than you?
gosh.
All
Hold
of
on.
them.
Oh, gosh.
All of them.
Okay, less educated in that, yes, because I have a Juris Doctorate degree.
So why do you think, why has this split?
It's not going to
Wait,
go well.
your first husband married up because he was a Democrat, you were a Republican.
Yes,
too.
this is
That
true.
too.
As a prosecutor, I
That too.
concur with that. Okay, what else?
Isn't it a function of
How's
just
he going to mess me up here?
more and more women going to college, I think, first of all?
Well, yes, but I felt like in my law school class, over 50% of the class were women. So
And 3
that
of
was it.
120 in my law school.
Right. So I think that that's, tends to be the case. But nevertheless, sometimes I think it's good, marriages can work out well if you have, yes, similar backgrounds, but in some respects as well, similar educations or interests and things of that nature.
You're the youngest, I assume, here at the table.
Obviously. Correct.
Tell me what you think is the single most proven determinant to whether or not someone will be impoverished as an adult. The single most important classification.
No, education and marriage. And you've said
it's marriage.
Education and marriage, you've said that's the greatest wealth builder right there. And I believe anytime a man marries, he's marrying up. Because let's be honest, Geraldo, we're a bunch of cavemen, and we need women to civilize us.
You want
That's
a good
very
weekend,
clear.
don't you?
Yes. Is that enough? Are we good?
Do it.
And I'm going to cede the rest of my talk time to Kimberly and Geraldo. I really like listening to you guys. Talk about marriage.
Why, is there something you want to tell us? No.
No, not at all. I do agree. I mean, listen, if you marry a very successful and highly educated woman, you can either do one of two things. You can become a stay-at-home husband, and you can take care of the kids and work on your golf game, and she can bring home the bacon. Or if you're also a very successful person and bring home a lot of money, then you both can bring home a lot of money. You hire a nanny, and then you retire early and work on your short game and your tan. So both of those options are
How's
good
that
options.
going? Yeah.
In your life, Dana, what do you think in terms of your husband is an educated man? You meet in school.
My husband is definitely more knowledgeable and smarter than I am, but I went to school for many years more than he did in his life. I mean, but he went to boarding school in Scotland, and they just did with the Maris brothers, who did an incredible job. He's one of the most brilliant people I know. But I do think it's because, like, if our parents, this would have been true. Right? My mom made less than my dad. She didn't have as much education.
Your mom would still make less than your dad.
Probably, yes. But that flips, right? As Generation X became the generation that really pretty much, like, we tried to go to college. And now what you're having with millennials in particular is that people with education tend to marry each other. And one of the things that article was talking about is that if the one thing that you can make sure that will prevent you from being in poverty is marriage. It's the only proven factual thing. So if you can figure out a way to find a loved one and stay committed, your chances of a happier and more wealthy life is assured.
Why, Greg, don't you think people are getting married? Because fewer are getting married.
Because the second part of that is when you get divorced is the single determining factor in being broke. Because if you talk to any man who's been through a divorce, he will tell you, probably Geraldo knows that better than anybody. But anyway,
I've been broke, and I've always come back.
Yeah, exactly. But it goes back to the stats from 2003. It's 1.35 females for every male who has graduated from college. So this is an inequality that's conveniently ignored by feminists. Also, women live longer by an average, I think, of about 10%, like we're about 7 years longer. And that's another, biological inequality that we don't talk about.
My wife's going to outlive me by half a century.
Yeah, she's looking forward to it.
You're so mean.
I will stop there.
On that happy note, don't move. Facebook Friday is up next.
Very romantic movie, Taxi Driver. That's the Taxi Driver.
Yeah, we got it. Yeah.
All right, Raymond A. I'm going to go to you, Dana. This is a great question. If you could have one do-over in your life, what would it be?
One is hard.
You could have more do-overs.
And the thing is, like, most of the things that you have in your life, you look back and think, well, okay, you can't really change it. But I think there is something. I was really good in school, got great grades, but I was really good at getting out of taking the hardest classes. So, like, I figured out a way not to have to take physics. Sometimes I took easier classes.
You went for easy A's,
yeah.
Dana. That's disgusting.
I know. I'm mad at myself.
You should be, and you should not forgive yourself. You should carry this guilt with you to the day you die.
Got it.
All right, Jesse.
That's a pretty benign regret.
I know, but it's such a Dana regret. I wish, if only
I wish I had Cherry vanilla instead of vanilla.
No, I wish I took tougher courses than the courses I already took.
Oh, you know, here's one of the reasons. I had to really play a lot of catch up on reading literature, conservative ideology, all of that thing. I was way behind.
Everybody does that. I do. I'm reading everything I was on my syllabus that I didn't. Jesse.
There were probably one or two Waters Worlds I shot, which I would have maybe liked to have a mulligan on.
That's
Here in this